The great chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held representatives from hundreds of worlds, each one more alien than the last. Some had scales, others had tentacles, and a few were made of pure energy. They had come together for one purpose today, and the air was thick with anticipation. Samuel Grant stood alone on the smallest platform in the room. He was a tall man, with gray hair and tired eyes. 6 months ago, he had been a history professor in a small town in Nebraska. Now he was the only human being within 1,000 light years of Earth. The United Nations had chosen him for this mission because he was calm under pressure and because he believed in the goodness of all thinking beings. That belief was about to be tested. The motion before the assembly is simple, announced the Valkyrie ambassador. A 7-foot reptilian creature named Zereth. His scales were deep purple, and his eyes glowed with a cold yellow light. The species known as humans have been evaluated according to standard protocols. They possess limited technology, minimal defensive capabilities, and occupy a resource-rich planet. I move that they be classified as a servitor species and their world divided among member nations. Samuel felt his heart sink. He had expected some hostility when humanity made first contact with the galactic community. He had not expected this. "I would like to address the assembly," Samuel said, keeping his voice steady. Zereth made a sound that might have been laughter. "The creature wishes to speak." "How amusing." "Very well, human. You have 1 minute." Samuel took a deep breath. He had prepared a speech about cooperation and mutual benefit. He had practiced it 100 times on the journey here. Now, looking out at the sea of alien faces, he knew it would not matter. But he had to try. "My people have dreamed of the stars for thousands of years," he began. "We have looked up at the night sky and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we are not. We come to you with open hands and open hearts. We seek friendship, trade, and the exchange of knowledge. We have much to offer and much to learn." The assembly was silent. Samuel allowed himself a small hope. "We ask only to be treated as equals," he continued, "to be given the chance to prove our worth. We do not seek charity or special treatment. We simply ask for the opportunity that every thinking species deserves." He stopped speaking. The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then Zereth spoke again. Very touching. "Now, shall we vote?" The voting took less than a minute. 247 species were represented in the assembly. 247 voted yes. The motion passed unanimously. Samuel stood frozen on his platform as the chamber erupted in discussion about how to divide Earth's resources and population. He heard phrases like mineral rights and labor, allocation, and breeding programs. It spoke of his people the way farmers spoke of cattle. Enslavement fleet will depart in 3 standard rotations, Zereth announced. Humans will be cataloged according to their physical and mental capabilities. Healthy adults will be assigned to labor duties. Children will be raised in proper facilities to ensure maximum productivity. Elderly and disabled individuals will be processed for biological materials. Samuel felt sick. 8 billion people. His mother, his brother, his students, everyone he had ever known. They were all going to be slaves, or worse. "I would like to enter a formal objection into the record," he said. His voice did not shake. The laughter that followed was the worst sound Samuel had ever heard. Hundreds of alien voices, mocking his helplessness, celebrating the doom of his species. "Your objection is noted and irrelevant," Zereth said. "Your species has no standing in this body. You never did. We only allowed you to speak for our amusement." Samuel nodded slowly. He gathered his documents and began walking toward the exit. As he passed Zereth's platform, he stopped and looked up at the Valkyrie ambassador. "I just wanted it on record that we asked nicely first," he said. Then he continued walking. Behind him, the laughter faded into confused silence. Something in the human's tone had been wrong. There had been no fear, no despair. If anything, he had sounded almost relieved. Zereth shook off the strange feeling. Humans were primitives. What could they possibly do? 12 hours later, Samuel's message reached Earth. It was received in a bunker 300 meters beneath the Rocky Mountains. In a facility that did not officially exist, the message was short, unanimous. Proceed with Omega. General Patricia Hayes read the message 3 times. She was a woman in her 60s, with short silver hair and a face that had seen too many hard decisions. This would be the hardest one yet. The bunker was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists from every nation. For 10 years they had worked together in absolute secrecy, preparing for this moment. They had hoped it would never come. They voted unanimously, Patricia announced. Every species in the Galactic Assembly chose to enslave humanity. There were no abstentions, no objections, no voices of mercy.
Ow.
The room was silent. Many of the leaders had hoped that the aliens would be reasonable, that some of them, at least, would speak up for humanity. Now that hope was dead, Dr. Leonard Cole stepped forward. He was a thin man with wild gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through people. 10 years ago, he had been the first scientist to examine the crashed alien vessel that had landed in the Nevada desert. That vessel had changed everything. The alien technology was more advanced than anything we had ever seen, he said. But it also showed us that we had been thinking about physics all wrong. While we were building rockets, the rest of the galaxy was folding space and slipping between dimensions. We thought we were centuries behind. We were wrong. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a network of massive structures hidden beneath the Earth's surface, connected by lines of pulsing energy. We have spent 10 years building this. We have unified the entire planet in secret, devoted every resource to a single purpose. The aliens think we are primitives because we let them think that. We hid our satellites, shut down our radio signals, and pretended to be helpless. Patricia stepped forward. The enslavement fleet will arrive in 3 days. When they get here, they will find an empty planet. 8 billion people will have been evacuated to a dimensional pocket that their sensors cannot detect. And then we will show them what primitives can really do. She looked around the room at the assembled leaders. Some looked frightened. Some looked grim. A few looked almost eager. God forgive us for what we are about to do, she said quietly. Dr. Cole shook his head. God has nothing to do with this. They made their choice. Now they will face the consequences. In orbit high above Earth, hidden satellites began transmitting a single coded signal. Across the planet, in bunkers and facilities unknown to any alien observer, systems that had been dormant for a decade began to wake up. Humanity was done asking nicely. The Valkyrie enslavement fleet was the largest military force ever assembled for a single conquest. 3,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. 500 transport vessels designed to hold millions of slaves. And at the center of it all, the command ship Dominance, a vessel so massive that it had its own gravity. Fleet Commander Vrasos stood on the bridge of the Dominance, watching the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. He was old for a Valkyrie, nearly 200 years, and he had conquered dozens of worlds in his career. This one would be the easiest yet. Initial scans complete, Commander, reported his tactical officer, a young female named Syrinx. No orbital defenses detected. No warships. No military satellites. The planet appears to be completely undefended. Vrasos allowed himself a thin smile. Cowards. They didn't even try to resist. Begin landing operations immediately. I want the major population centers secured within 6 hours, Commander Syrinx said slowly. I am detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. They don't match anything in our database. Irrelevant. They are primitives with primitive technology. Whatever they are doing cannot possibly threaten us. Proceed with the operation. The first wave of transport ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. They targeted the largest cities first: New York, Beijing, Mumbai, London. Tokyo. Each transport carried 10,000 stasis pods, ready to be filled with human slaves. The ships landed in empty streets. Commander Vrasos received the reports with growing confusion. New York was deserted. Beijing was empty. Every city on the planet had been abandoned. 8 billion humans had simply vanished. "This is impossible," he growled. "Scan for underground structures. They must be hiding somewhere." The scans came back negative. There were underground facilities, yes, but they were empty too. "No life signs anywhere on the planet, Commander?" Sirix's voice was sharp with alarm. "Energy readings are spiking across the planet. I'm detecting massive power surges from multiple locations." "What kind of power surges?" "Unknown. The readings are off our scales. I've never seen anything like this on the surface of Earth." In a facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Leonard Cole watched the alien fleet through sensors that the Valkyrie couldn't even detect. Beside him stood Patricia Hayes and a team of technicians, all of them calm despite what they were about to do. "Dimensional fold confirmed," reported Kevin Park. A young engineer with steady hands and a brilliant mind. "All 8 billion civilians have been successfully relocated to the shadow dimension. They are safe and comfortable. And the aliens?" Patricia asked. 3,000 warships in orbit, 500 transports on the surface, approximately 2 million personnel total. Kevin paused. "Awaiting your command, General." Patricia looked at the display showing the alien fleet. These beings had come to enslave her people. They had voted unanimously to turn humans into property, to work them to death, to process the old and sick for biological materials. They had laughed when Samuel Grant asked for mercy. "Activate the dimensional cannons," she said. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, weapons that had taken a decade to build came online. They did not fire beams of energy or launch missiles. They did something far more terrible. They reached into the fabric of reality itself and simply removed things from existence. On the bridge of the Dominance, Commander Vraxos had exactly 3 seconds to realize something was wrong. His view screen flickered. His sensors screamed warnings that made no sense. And then the ship around him began to dissolve. It was not an explosion. There was no fire, no debris, no sound. The molecules that made up the Dominance were simply pulled apart and scattered across a dozen different dimensions, spread so thin that they could never be reassembled. One moment there was a ship. The next moment there was nothing. Across the solar system, 3,000 warships vanished in the same instant. 500 transports on Earth's surface followed a second later. 2 million alien soldiers ceased to exist without even knowing what had killed them. The entire operation took less than 10 seconds in the assembly chamber. Light years away, alarms began to sound. The Valkyrie representative, a junior diplomat who had been left behind while the fleet departed, stared at his console in disbelief. "The fleet," he whispered. "The entire fleet is gone." "What do you mean gone?" demanded Representative Moreth of the Zelani Collective. "Right. I mean gone. No wreckage, no distress signals, no survivors. 3,000 ships have simply vanished." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, demanding explanations, assigning blame. None of them understood what had happened. None of them could accept the obvious truth. The humans had done this. The primitives, the weaklings. The soon-to-be slaves had just annihilated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Back on Earth, Patricia Hayes allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The first phase was complete, but this was just the beginning. "Recall the civilian population," she ordered. "Begin Phase 2 preparations." "What is Phase 2? asked Kevin Park. Dr. Cole answered without looking up from his console. "We just showed them we can defend ourselves. Now we're going to show them what happens when you try to enslave humanity." They voted unanimously. Every single species chose to participate in our enslavement. Now they will all face the consequences. "Even the ones who didn't send ships?" Kevin asked. "They didn't send ships because they were waiting for the Valkyrie to do the hard work. They were perfectly happy to receive human slaves without getting their hands dirty. That doesn't make them innocent. It makes them cowards." In the shadow dimension, 8 billion humans waited for news. They had been evacuated from their homes with only minutes of warning, told that Earth was being invaded and that they needed to trust their governments. Most of them had no idea what was happening. Samuel Grant was the exception. He stood in a temporary command center, watching the same feeds that Patricia Hayes was watching. He had been the one to deliver the message that started all of this. He had been the one to look into Zyreth's eyes and see nothing but contempt. "It's done." Patricia's voice came through the communication channel. "The fleet has been eliminated. You can begin diplomatic preparations." Diplomatic preparations. Samuel repeated. "You want me to negotiate with them?" "No. I want you to deliver our terms. There will be no negotiation." They had their chance to negotiate when they laughed at your request for mercy. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. He had spent his whole life believing in diplomacy and compromise and the power of words to solve problems. That belief had died in the assembly chamber. "What are our terms?" he asked. "Unconditional surrender of all military assets, complete economic reorganization, and a formal apology from every species that voted to enslave us." "They'll never agree to that." Patricia's voice was cold. "They don't have a choice. We're not asking permission. We're telling them what's going to happen. And if they resist, they'll share the fate of the Valkyrie fleet." Samuel closed his eyes. This was not the future he had imagined for humanity. But perhaps it was the future they deserved. "I understand," he said. "I'll deliver the message." "One more thing," Patricia added. "Make sure they know this is just the beginning. We're not just going to defeat them. We're going to make sure this never happens again. Whatever it takes." Samuel nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Whatever it takes," he repeated. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Assembly had been in emergency session for 3 days. Representatives from 247 species argued, blamed each other, and demanded explanations that no one could provide. The destruction of the Valkyrie fleet had shaken them to their core. Representative Moroth of the Zilani Collective slammed his tentacle against his console. "We need to send a second fleet immediately. The humans must be punished for this act of aggression." "Aggression?" shouted the Cathroni ambassador, an insectoid creature with clicking mandibles. "They destroyed an invasion force that was sent to enslave them. How is that aggression?" "They killed 2 million Valkyrie soldiers. The Valkyrie soldiers were going to kill far more humans." The chamber dissolved into chaos once again. This had been the pattern for 3 days. Accusations, arguments, and no resolution. Then the doors of the chamber opened. Every representative fell silent as Samuel Grant walked calmly toward the speaker's platform. He was not supposed to be here. This station was protected by military-grade shields, guarded by the finest soldiers in the galaxy. No unauthorized vessel could approach within a light year without being detected. Yet here he was. "How did you get in here?" Moroth demanded. "Our security systems are impenetrable." Samuel smiled slightly. It was not a friendly smile. "Your security systems are designed to stop ships and weapons that you understand. We walked through your shields like they weren't even there. Your guards didn't see us until we wanted them to." He reached the speaker's platform and turned to face the assembly. His gray uniform was simple and unadorned, bearing only Earth's insignia. He looked older than he had 3 days ago, but his eyes were calm and steady. "I have come to deliver a message from the United Earth government," he said. "Please listen carefully, because I will not repeat myself. You dare come here and make demands?" Moroth sputtered. "After what your people did?" "What my people did," Samuel said slowly, "was defend themselves against an unprovoked attack. An attack that every species in this room voted for." Unanimously, the chamber was silent. "You had a choice," Samuel continued. "When the motion was proposed, you could have voted no. You could have abstained. You could have spoken up for mercy, for justice, for the basic rights that you claim to believe in. Instead, every single one of you voted to enslave 8 billion innocent people." He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many representatives as he could. "Do you remember what you said when I asked for clemency? Do you remember how you laughed? Do you remember discussing how to divide our children into labor categories?" Several representatives looked away. They remembered. The Valkyrie fleet is gone. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment has been erased from existence. This was not an act of war. It was pest control. Moroth's face twisted with rage. You murdered 2 million people. They came to murder far more. They came to enslave, to torture, to destroy. We gave them exactly what they intended to give us." Samuel paused. "Actually, that's not true. We were kinder. We killed them instantly. They planned to work us to death slowly." He pressed a button on a small device in his hand. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing Earth. But it was not the Earth they had scanned before the invasion. This Earth was surrounded by massive structures that seemed to fold in and out of normal space. Orbital platforms the size of moons. Shipyards producing vessels that their sensors couldn't even classify. "This is what Earth looks like now," Samuel said. "This is what we have been hiding from you for the past decade. While you were scanning us and laughing at our primitive rockets, we were building weapons that make your technology look like toys." The chamber was completely silent. Every representative stared at the display in shock. "Over the next 30 days, humanity will be dismantling your military capabilities. Every warship, every weapons platform, every defense system in the galaxy will be removed. We will not be conquering your worlds. We will not be enslaving your people. We will simply be making sure that you can never threaten anyone again." "You can't do this," Morith shouted. "The Assembly will not allow it." "The Assembly," Samuel said coldly, "voted unanimously to enslave my people. The Assembly has no authority here. The Assembly is part of the problem." He began walking among the representative pods, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. "You built an empire on cruelty. You classified species as servitors and property based on their technology level. You enslaved billions of sentient beings because they couldn't fight back. You created a galaxy where might makes right and the weak exist only to serve the strong." Samuel stopped at the center of the chamber. "We are going to change that. Starting now. This is tyranny." Another representative cried, "No, tyranny is what you were planning for us. This is justice." Samuel looked around the room one final time. "You have 30 days. Cooperate, and your civilian populations will be unharmed. Resist, and you will share the fate of the Valkyrie fleet. The choice is yours." He turned and began walking toward the exit. "Wait," Morith called out. "What do you want?" "Resources. Territory. We can negotiate." Samuel stopped but did not turn around. "It's too late for negotiation. You should have thought about that before you voted unanimously to enslave us. Now you will learn what it means to face consequences for your actions. Please." Another voice this time, thin and desperate. "We were just following the law. The Galactic Code requires us to vote on species classification." The Galactic Code. Samuel finally turned. His voice was soft but carried through the entire chamber. "You hide behind your laws as if they excuse what you did? Your laws said it was acceptable to enslave thinking beings. Your laws said it was acceptable to tear children from their parents and process the elderly for biological materials. Your laws are an abomination." He paused at the doorway. "In 30 days, there will be no more Galactic Code. There will be no more species classification. There will be no more assembly voting on who gets to be enslaved. There will only be a new galaxy, one where every species is equal, and slavery is a crime punishable by extinction."
Ow.
"And if we refuse?" Morith asked. Samuel smiled, and for the first time, there was something dangerous in his expression. "Then, in 31 days, there will be 246 species in the galaxy instead of 247, and we will keep subtracting until you understand." He walked through the doorway and vanished, leaving 247 species to contemplate their futures. The reckoning had begun. In the Rocky Mountain facility, Patricia Hayes watched the feed from the assembly chamber. Samuel had performed perfectly. The message had been delivered. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "Start with the Zelani Collective." They were the most vocal supporters of the enslavement motion. Dr. Cole nodded and began entering commands. Across the galaxy, dimensional fold generators activated, and humanity's revenge began in earnest. They had voted unanimously. Now they would suffer unanimously. The Zelani, collective had ruled their sector of space for 10,000 years. Their empire spanned 40 worlds, their fleet numbered in the tens of thousands, and their industrial capacity was unmatched. They had grown fat on conquest and slavery, confident that no force in the galaxy could challenge them. That confidence died in a single night. Admiral Catherine Moore stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the operation unfold on her tactical display. She was a woman in her 50s, with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the revelation of alien life, she had commanded a carrier group in the Pacific. Now, she commanded the first dimensional warship ever built by human hands. Zilani Defense Grid is coming online, reported her tactical officer. Christopher Bell. He was young, barely 30, but his hands were steady on the console. They're attempting to lock onto our position. Let them try, Catherine said calmly. The Zilani targeting systems searched for the human fleet, but found nothing. The Defiance and her sister ships existed in a dimensional layer that alien sensors simply could not perceive. They could see the Zilani, but the Zilani could not see them. Defense grid neutralization in 3, 2, 1. The Zilani orbital platforms vanished. One moment they were there, bristling with weapons, ready to defend their homeworld. The next moment, they were gone. Scattered across dimensions in a way that could never be undone, Catherine watched the tactical display update. Civilian infrastructure status? Intact. No collateral damage detected. Power grids are functioning. Transportation systems are operational. The only things we removed were military assets. Good. Proceed to Phase 2. Across the Zilani homeworld, military bases began to disappear. Weapons factories dissolved into dimensional static. Shipyards crumbled without a trace. The Zilani watched in horror as everything that had made them powerful was stripped away with surgical precision. There were no explosions, number fires, no debris. Their military might was simply erased from existence, leaving their civilian population completely unharmed but utterly defenseless. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Kathrani Empire, once feared for their massive battle fleets, found themselves without a single warship. The Marathi hegemony, renowned for their weapons research, watched their laboratories vanish overnight. The Vishori Federation, the Threllan Confederacy, the Mindor Union, one by one. Every species that had voted to enslave humanity was stripped of their military power. In the Rocky Mountain facility, Patricia Hayes coordinated the operation with Colonel Dennis Gray at her side. Dennis was a grizzled veteran who had spent 30 years in special operations before being recruited for this project. He watched the reports come in with grim satisfaction. The Kathrani are attempting to hide vessels in their outer asteroid belt, he reported. Dr. Cole didn't look up from his console. Found them. 312 warships, trying to mask their energy signatures. He pressed a button. Not anymore. Patricia watched as 300 ships vanished from the display. Casualties. 0 civilian. Approximately 50,000 military personnel removed along with the vessels. Acceptable. She turned to the main display, which showed the overall progress of the operation. 60% of galactic military assets had been eliminated. At this rate, they would complete the primary phase within 72 hours. Begin economic targeting, she ordered. Dennis raised an eyebrow. We're hitting their industry too? We're hitting everything that could be used to rebuild their military. Mining operations, manufacturing plants, research centers. If it can be used to make weapons, it's going. It will devastate their economies. Millions could starve. Patricia turned to face him. Her expression was hard, but there was pain in her eyes. They were going to do worse to us. They were going to work our children to death in their mines and process our elderly for biological materials. If their economies collapse, they can rebuild peacefully. If we show mercy now, they will rebuild their fleets and come for us again. If they still resist after we've taken everything, then we'll take more. We'll keep taking until they understand that slavery is not acceptable, until they learn that there are some lines that should never be crossed. Across the galaxy, species that had spent millennia building empires watched those empires crumble. The Zilani lost not only their fleet, but their shipyards, their weapons factories, and their mining colonies. The Kethrani saw their industrial capacity reduced by 90% in a single day. The Marathi lost every piece of advanced technology they had ever developed. And through it all, humanity never killed a single civilian. They were precise, surgical, almost gentle in their destruction. Cities were left intact. Power grids continued to function. Food distribution systems kept operating. Only the tools of war were removed. Some species resisted. The Threllan Confederacy attempted to launch a counterattack, sending their remaining ships in a desperate assault on what they believed was the human command center. They found nothing but empty space, and then they found oblivion. Others tried to hide. The Vishori Federation concealed their most advanced vessels in dimensional pockets of their own. Technology they had kept secret for centuries. The humans found them anyway. Reaching into those hidden spaces and removing the ships with casual ease, a few tried to negotiate. They sent messages offering peace, trade, alliance, anything to stop the destruction. The humans didn't respond. They simply continued their work, methodical and unstoppable. By the end of the third week, every species in the galaxy was effectively disarmed. The greatest military powers in known space had been reduced to technological levels that humans would have considered primitive a century ago. And then humanity turned its attention to the economic foundations that had made those militaries possible. Admiral Catherine Moore received her new orders with a heavy heart. She understood the necessity, but that didn't make it easier. "We're targeting the Zilani slave markets," she told her crew. "Every facility that trades in sentient beings, every transport that carries slaves, every record that documents ownership of living creatures." Christopher Bell looked up from his console. "What about the slaves themselves?" "We're going to free them. All of them. Every enslaved being in the galaxy will be returned to their homeworld or given sanctuary on a human-protected planet. That's billions of individuals. Yes, and every single one of them was a person that the Assembly decided didn't deserve freedom." Catherine's voice hardened. "They voted unanimously to make us into slaves. Now they're going to watch us free every slave they ever took." The operation took another week. Slave markets vanished. Transport ships were captured and their living cargo liberated. Records of ownership were erased from every database in the galaxy. Species that had built their entire economies on slave labor found themselves without workers. They screamed for mercy, for understanding, for just a little more time. Humanity ignored them. When it was over, Patricia Hayes stood before the assembled leadership of Earth's unified government. The operation had been a complete success. No human casualties. Minimal alien civilian deaths. And the galactic order that had threatened to enslave them had been completely destroyed. "What now?" asked one of the leaders. Patricia looked at the display, showing the crippled remnants of galactic civilization. "Now, we build something better. A galaxy where slavery is impossible, where the strong cannot prey on the weak, where what almost happened to us can never happen to anyone else. And if they try to stop us..." Patricia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They can't stop us. That's the whole point. We have the power now, and we're going to use it to make sure this never happens again." She turned to Dr. Cole. "Begin Phase 3. Economic reconstruction under human supervision." So they won't like that. "I don't care what they like. They had their chance to be reasonable. Now, they're going to learn a new way of doing things. Whether they want to or not, the fall was complete. Now came the harder part. Building something from the ashes. 6 months had passed since the vote that was supposed to doom humanity. The Galactic Assembly Chamber, once a symbol of power and arrogance, now felt like a courtroom. The representatives who gathered there came not with demands or threats, but with heads bowed and voices trembling. They came to beg. Samuel Grant sat in the speaker's chair, the same seat that had once been reserved for the Assembly's president. The irony was not lost on him. 6 months ago, he had stood on the smallest platform in this room, asking for mercy that was never given. Now the most powerful beings in the galaxy came to ask mercy from him. Representative Morith of the Zilani Collective spoke first. The once proud diplomat looked like he had aged decades. His tentacles hung limp, and his voice was barely a whisper. The human delegation has been asked to hear our petition for clemency. Our people are suffering. Without our industrial base, without our trade networks, millions face starvation. Our medical facilities cannot produce basic medicines. Our children are dying from diseases that we conquered thousands of years ago. Samuel listened without expression. The Kathrani ambassador spoke next, her clicking mandibles subdued. The Kathrani Empire has been reduced to a pre-industrial state. We have no power, no transportation, no communication between our worlds. Our population is collapsing. We beg you, in the name of compassion, to restore what you have taken. One by one, the representatives made their cases. Some wept, some raged. Most simply pleaded, their pride long since destroyed. The Vashori described children starving in the streets. The Threllan spoke of plagues spreading through populations that no longer had the technology to fight disease. The Marathi described the complete collapse of their social order. With millions dying in the chaos, Samuel listened to all of it. He remembered how these same voices had laughed when he asked for mercy. He remembered how they had discussed dividing human children into labor categories. He remembered how not a single one of them had spoken up against the enslavement motion. When the last representative had finished speaking, Samuel stood. "You asked for clemency," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. For mercy, for understanding, the chamber was silent. "These are concepts you did not extend to us." Several representatives flinched as if struck. 8 billion people. Men, women, children. You voted to tear them from their homes, to separate families, to work them until they died, and then replace them with more. You did this unanimously, without a single voice of opposition. He began walking slowly among the representative pods, making eye contact with each delegate in turn. "We could have done the same to you. We have the power. When we removed your military capabilities, when we dismantled your economies, we proved that there is nothing you could do to stop us. We could have enslaved every species in this room. We could have processed your elderly for biological materials. We could have divided your children into labor categories." His voice hardened. "We could have exterminated you entirely, erased your species from existence with the same ease that we erased your fleets. We had the power, and some would say the justification." He stopped at the center of the chamber. "But we are not you." The words hung in the air. Several representatives began to weep openly. "Humanity will grant clemency," Samuel continued. "Not because you deserve it. You don't. It's not because we've forgotten what you tried to do. We never will. But because we refuse to become the monsters you assumed we were." The relief in the chamber was overwhelming. Representatives collapsed in their seats, sobbing with gratitude. Others clasped their appendages together in prayer or meditation. A few simply stared in disbelief. But Samuel wasn't finished. "There will be conditions. These are not negotiable. They will be accepted, or the offer of clemency will be withdrawn." The chamber fell silent again. "First, the Galactic Assembly is dissolved. Forever. In its place. We will help establish a new governing body with actual representation for all species, including those you previously classified as servitors, the Valkyrie slaves, the Zilani laborers, the Kathrani workers. Every species you ever deemed inferior will have an equal voice in the new government." Moreth opened his mouth to object, then closed it. He had no leverage left. "Second, the practice of species enslavement is permanently banned. Not regulated. Not restricted. Banned. Completely and forever. Any species that attempts to enslave another will face immediate and total response from humanity. We will serve as the enforcement mechanism for this law. We will be watching. Always. Third, you will teach your children what happened here. Not as a warning about human power, not as a cautionary tale about military strategy, but as a lesson about the cost of cruelty Every generation will learn that their ancestors voted to enslave an innocent species, and that they paid the price for that choice. Samuel looked around the chamber one final time. Fourth, you will rebuild, but you will rebuild differently. Your economies will no longer be based on exploitation. Your societies will no longer be structured around the strong preying on the weak. You will find new ways to prosper, ways that don't require slaves or conquered peoples. He paused. We will help you. We will share technology and resources to ease the transition. We will provide humanitarian aid to the populations that are suffering. We are not interested in revenge. We are interested in making sure this never happens again. Marth finally spoke, his voice breaking. Why? After everything we tried to do to you, why would you help us? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Because suffering doesn't stop suffering. Because cruelty doesn't prevent cruelty. Because the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to end it. He met Morith's eyes. You taught us something when you voted to enslave us. You taught us what we never want to become. He walked toward the exit, then paused at the door. You voted unanimously to enslave us. Now, unanimously, you will learn to be better. And if you ever forget this lesson, if any species ever again votes to enslave another, we will be watching. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. And next time, we may not be so merciful. Samuel Grant left the chamber. Behind him, 247 species sat in stunned silence, contemplating a future they had never imagined possible. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. The old empires, built on conquest and slavery, gave way to something new. A galactic federation emerged, with equal representation for all species. Trade resumed, but on fair terms. Technology was shared rather than hoarded. And at the center of it all, humanity stood as guardian and guide. Patricia Hayes retired from military service. She spent her remaining years teaching history, making sure that the next generation understood both the darkness that humanity had faced and the light they had chosen instead. Dr. Cole continued his research, pushing the boundaries of dimensional physics. He often said that power without wisdom was meaningless, and he worked to ensure that humanity's wisdom grew along with its capabilities. Samuel Grant became the first human. Representative to the new Galactic Federation, he spent decades building relationships with species that had once voted to enslave his people. Many of them became friends. Some even became family, and the galaxy remembered. Every year. On the anniversary of the vote, every species held a day of remembrance. They taught their children the story of how 247 species voted to enslave humanity, and how humanity had responded with power beyond imagining, but also